Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
Welcome to Living the Gospel of Life. I'm your host, Leticia Velasquez, and we will start with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. O Mary, bright dawn of the new world, Mother of the living, to you do we entrust the cause of life. Look down, O Mother, upon the vast numbers of babies not allowed to be born, of the poor whose lives are made difficult, of men and women who are victims of brutal violence, of the elderly and sick killed by indifference or misguided mercy. Grant that all who believe in your Son may proclaim the gospel of life with honesty and love to the people of our time. Obtain for them the grace to accept that gospel as a gift ever new, the joy of celebrating it with gratitude throughout their lives, and the courage to bear witness to it resolutely in order to build, together with all people of goodwill, the civilization of truth and love, to the praise and glory of God, Creator and Lover of life. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. This morning I'm pleased to present Nick Loeb, who is the writer, director, and producer of Roe versus Wade, which is a historical suspense drama based on the Supreme Court decision of 1973, January 22nd, probably the best-known Supreme Court decision of all of American history. And he is also acting as Dr. Bernard Nathanson, one of the proponents of the abortion laws of Roe versus Wade in our country. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, and wonderful prayer, by the way.
Thank you. I didn't write it. Pope John Paul II. It's from the Culture of Life, from Evangelium Vitae from 1995. But that's what this whole show is based on, bringing about the culture of life. And you were doing something very important. I've often said that Americans have no idea how abortion became legal in this country, and you're going to tell the backstory. Am I right?
Yeah, it's not just about the court case. It's literally how the court case came to be, and really a little bit of the history of abortion in this country, even prior to 1973, and coming up until we get to Roe, and then we go through the court case as well, obviously. But it's an interesting history, and interestingly enough, I think most Americans have heard of Roe v. Wade, like I had, but nobody really knew, or neither did I, how Roe came to be and how it was decided and who the people were involved, which I find to be fascinating.
Right. It governs so much of our lives, yet we have no idea how it came about and who were the people that were the proponents of it. Who are the main antagonists in this movie? Who do you focus on?
Well, it's interesting that you put it the way as an antagonist. So, we look... We actually look at Bernard Nathanson as one of the protagonists in the movie, although he's crusader for choice. As we do Dr. Mildred Jefferson, who was the first African-American woman to graduate Harvard Medical School, and she was one of the first presidents of National Right to Life, and she starts off as the antagonist, interestingly enough, in our film. And we follow Bernard's journey, but in terms of getting, which people may find this interesting, is getting Roe passed and people involved in the history of abortion. Really, Roe and Wade had nothing to do with it at all.
Yes.
Even though their names are on the case. Really, the abortion movement was in America was founded by a guy named Larry Lader, who was the father of the abortion movement. And he was mentored by a woman named Margaret Sanger, who was the founder of Planned Parenthood. And although she wasn't pro-abortion, he was. And, he sort of took up the cause, and he wrangled people like Betty Friedan and Bernard Nathanson, and was a founder of NARAL. And he essentially is really Larry and Bernard that got abortion legalized in the United States.
Yes.
Interestingly, it was a whole group of people, but it was really those guys that started the whole movement.
And Larry Lader had a great influence on the clerk who was working for the Supreme Court Justice who wrote the majority opinion in Roe versus Wade. Am I right?
Yeah, so Larry had written a book called Abortion. He's written several books, but he was the first guy to ever write a book. It was called Abortion. And Blacknam, who wrote the opinion, actually sourced Larry's book and article, I think, 7 times which is interesting because part of what Larry had done is he was working with Planned Parenthood's lawyer, a guy named Cyril Means, and Blackman also quoted his. And what they had done is essentially rewritten British and old American history, showing that abortion had been legal in the past and should be legal again, which is completely untrue. If you really read, abortion really was illegal, for the past 800 years. Going back into England, there was thousands and thousands of prosecutions.
So basically, it was an activist book that helped form the Supreme Court Justices Blackmun's decision, Roe versus Wade. So it wasn't based on history and precedent. It was an activist.
Yeah, no, it was really interesting that was used. It was an activist book, and Blackmun only really used, one side. He only used the pro-choicer side to write his opinion, which is contrary to actually what we did when we made our movie. I used both sources from pro-choice and pro-lifer sources to write our film because we wanted to have sort of a balanced argument. Interestingly enough, most of the things that in our film that are outlandish don't even come from the pro-life side, come from the pro-choice side.
Yeah.
Not
surprised.
The things they admit to doing. And, like, for example, Sarah Weddington, who was the lawyer, Jane Rose lawyer in Roe, wrote a book. In her own book, she writes about two of the justices and how they each had family members working for Planned Parenthood at the time that affected their decision.
Wow.
And that they would play those. And so, which we felt was a huge conflict of interest.
It's so important to point it out.
Yeah, then you've got Margaret Sanger, who in her own autobiography, the founder of Planned Parenthood, writes about her experience going to a KKK rally and launching her Negro Project, reduce the amount of African Americans in our country.
Yes, yeah, that has been disputed, but she writes it in her own words, huh? So you can't dispute her own words. There's a photo that people were arguing about online of her at a KKK meeting.
Yeah, that's not a correct photo. The photo is because she spoke at a KKK rally in 1926.
1926.
And that photo is not correct. But if you want to read about her experience at the KKK rally, it's in her own words, in her autobiography, and we actually used that autobiography to write the scene of her at a KKK rally. And so it's literally depicted exactly as she wrote it, which we've been criticized for doing as lying, which is interesting.
Well, tell them to read the book, right?
This is what I've said, but she was a self-proclaimed eugenicist. And her focus really was.
Could you explain what a eugenicist is for our audience?
Yeah, so a eugenicist is like someone like Adolf Hitler who believes in a master race, and so her focus was really just she thought that there should only be white Christians. And so was not only against African Americans, but she was against Jews and Italians and, anything that sort of didn't follow within her mindset of, the smartest, most intelligent, most sophisticated, best looking, etc. Essentially, it's racism.
Yeah.
But what's very interesting is that the Daily Beast doesn't think that a eugenicist is a racist because they criticized my script for, they said that I described Margaret Sanger as a racist, and although she is a eugenicist, they said she's not a racist. And
they obviously don't understand what eugenicist is. Eugenics literally means good birth, and it means the right sort of birth, like Hitler brought it to its natural fruition in the Third Reich. He'd actually helped blonde-haired, blue-eyed Germans, which he wasn't, right? He was a brown-haired, brown-eyed Austrian, but he helped them to breed, to have children, and then to make sure that the wrong kind of people, in his point of view, the Jews, the Gypsies, the homosexuals, the priests, the Slavs, did not, and those like my daughter with Down syndrome, did not breed by killing them. And that's a natural of eugenics, is death.
Correct. And that also, since Margaret Sanger was really a racist and a eugenicist and a self-proclaimed eugenicist, the fact that Planned Parenthood could still exist because the founder was a eugenicist is astonishing to me, considering that the country is tearing down statues of generals during the Civil War because of their position on race. So I think that being said, they should just tear down Planned Parenthood because of its founder's position on race too, right? I mean, that would sort of make everything equal. I'm happy to take down all the statues of Robert E. Lee if you wanted to remove Planned Parenthood as well. So
that's right.
I think we should just make it equal, but that's the hypocrisy.
Well, yeah, but her protégés are doing a good job of making sure that no one finds it out, because every time we try and understand history, they try to shame you back into silence.
Well, here's what's also interesting about Margaret. So Margaret didn't actually believe in abortion. She actually was vehemently against abortion, but she believed not only in contraception, but she believed in sterilization. She wanted to sterilize the African-American community, so people couldn't actually procreate. So interestingly enough, Planned Parenthood has actually not become, even what she probably even wanted to become.
Right.
It's an abortion. It's complete abortion mills right now.
So she didn't understand that, that birth control and sterilization would naturally lead one to abortion. She didn't see the link.
I don't think she saw the link. I think she did see the link, but she was still against it. I mean, she believed also life began at conception. She believed she didn't want, destroying humans. She didn't, she's been quoted as there should be no killing of babies in the womb. That's literally a quote from Margaret Sanger.
Wow.
So she believed it was a baby in the womb, and she believed against killing a baby in the womb. And
so do you think she would be horrified at what Planned Parenthood does?
I think so, but I don't want to sit here and praise Margaret Sanger for what she may think of.
No.
Well, Planned Parenthood now, considering what she wanted Planned Parenthood to be is just as bad as to make it an institution for sterilization of African Americans.
Of course, and that was the outgrowth of eugenics in the United States in the 1920s. It was regularly done. African Americans and the mentally unfit were sterilized, as Buck versus Bell, the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court justice said 3 generations of idiots are enough. So,
but maybe we should. Anybody who has an abortion, maybe we should sterilize them.
Yeah.
How about that?
Right. Well. Very interesting. So, where did the idea? Who came up with the concept for this movie, Nick? I just sort of been in the pro-life movement recently, and someone had come up and said, "How come no one's ever made the movie Roe v. Wade?" And I said, "Well, probably I wouldn't make it because I'm pro-life, and because the first thing that comes to my mind when you say Roe v. Wade is being pro-abortion." And so, they said, "Well, do you know the history? Do you know that Norma McCorvey, who was Jane Roe, converted and became pro-life? Do you know that she was manipulated and lied to and all of these things?" And I said, "This is really interesting." So I started to read about it, and the more I read, the more I found out that this seemed to me like an Oliver Stone conspiracy movie like JFK. And so I found that it could be actually interesting to an American audience, that it wasn't just going to be about abortion and killing babies, but it was also going to be an interesting conspiracy movie, because I wanted to make something entertaining as well, that audience would like to go to be fun and entertaining. Well, it's definitely fascinating. I read the book by Sue Ellen Bauer, Subverted, and I learned quite a bit about how the women's movement was hijacked into the abortion movement. And you alluded to that when you talked about Larry Lader co-opting Nathanson and Betty Friedan.
Yeah, so I mean, people think it was a women's rights movement in America, and actually it wasn't. The women's rights movement, which is really started, everyone thinks it was started by Gloria Steinem, but really the pioneer was Betty Friedan, and she really was a true leader of the women's rights movement. She was the author of The Feminine Mystique and became, one of the most important feminists in American history. And she wasn't pro-abortion. She didn't care about the issue. It wasn't something she'd ever thought of. She just wanted equal rights for women, and so when Larry approached her about taking this up as an issue, her first reaction is, abortion really isn't our issue, isn't really our thing. And, Larry convinced her that if she took this up, she could strengthen her cause for women's rights. And I think Betty had other motives in mind besides just women's rights. I think Betty was, Betty had a really sort of difficult past herself. I think she was angry at the world. She was highly intelligent, but she was quite unattractive, and I think this really hurt her inside because she wanted attention that she wasn't getting, and part of the movement was so she could get attention.
Wow.
And this is, a lot of what sort of, and she was very angry and had a lot of, physical altercations with her husband, and I mean, go into the whole backstory. But I've a lot of this, you'll see a little bit of this, her backstory in the film. But, I think this is sort of was Betty's real motivation, and her taking on the abortion movement gave her a lot of press and power, and everyone now thought that it became a women's rights issue, and they sort of co-opted it from Larry. And then, what they decided to do in order to bring this out, they had to come up with a villain, right? They needed a bad guy. They said, there was no group out there. There's no Right to Life group, right? And the National Right to Life really hadn't started. There was no bad guy. When you're pro-choice, you have to come out. When you're anything, you have to have a bad guy to really rail against, or you're just railing to yourself, right? And so they had a strategy, and their bad guy they invented literally was the Catholics. They came out and said, let's create a villain, and they write about it in their book years later, and that villain will be the Catholics. And so literally they came out.
What year was this, Nick? Well, by around is it late '60s when?
You're like 69 and 70 because
so
this
it's
is
right
really
after Pope Paul VI declared that the Catholic Church would not condone birth control.
Correct, and really this all started with New York, right? So their first goal was to overturn abortion state by state, and they were going after the New York State Legislature, which they wanted in 1970. Abortion became legal in 1970 in New York, and then they realized, wow, this is 50 states. This is going to take a really long time to do 50 states,
right?
And so they figured out how do we do this in a sort of one fell swoop, and their idea was, well, let's get the Supreme Court to make a law, and so they needed to find a girl, so they started just literally search the country and scour the country anywhere to find a pregnant girl that they could utilize to sue the government to take it up to the Supreme Court, and then that's how they found Norma.
Sue the government for her so-called right to abortion, which didn't exist. Right? Is that
correct?
A pregnant girl in the state of Texas, which is what Norma McCorvey was, who Texas did not have legal abortion at that time.
No, in Texas, you could have an abortion if it had to do with the mother's health, and that really meant physical health, not this made up mental health issue that we have now, where doctors can just say, oh, you're suicidal in the 9th month, so you can just kill your baby. It was really and it was really having to do with the physical health. So the mother would actually physically die. That was the only way you could get an abortion. And I don't even think in the instance of rape, I can't remember. But so essentially Norma just wanted to have an abortion, and the lawyer said, oh, if you come with us and take this case on, you'll be able to have your abortion.
Okay.
And completely manipulated and lied to her. Obviously, we all know it takes years to get through court. You're not going to be able to just have a lawyer get to court and have.
She never got her abortion, did she? She had her baby.
She ended up having she had 3 babies. So the Roe baby was the 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
So she had 3 babies, and all of them were put up for adoption.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And she felt very badly for her decision in later life and came to the pro-life movement. I was able to.
Later in life, she realized what her clinic was doing, and had a conversion very similar to Abby Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
It came out with a great movie, Unplanned.
Right. Yeah, these stories are fascinating, and they definitely need to be told. And in the society which likes to say that we're open and honest, we sure have done a good job of hiding them and denying these stories that need to be told. I'm so glad you're doing this.
Well, thank you. Well, that's because essentially the film and the media is controlled by Hollywood and the left. So, if you want to have any story that opposes their beliefs, they try to suppress it or make it extremely difficult, or just don't do it. which makes it very difficult.
Has this happened to you? Have you encountered some resistance?
Oh yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, it was I had to raise money outside of Hollywood. We couldn't go out and get any nothing mainstream really involved. And even through the distribution process, that there are studios out there that are supportive, and there are a lot of studios out there that are saying, we won't touch a pro-life movie.
Right.
We won't even look at it. We won't even look at it, read the script. We don't want anything to do with it. And then there are people who just make up lies, and then lie about, like the Daily Beast and, a lot of the media. I mean, it was really funny. We had an article that came out a couple of months ago that said, we saw the trailer of the movie, and in the movie Roe v. Wade about the Supreme Court case, and it's on the Supreme Court. Can you believe it's all men? How horrible! And that's where the writer was really aware that on the Supreme Court in 1973, it actually just was all men. And so I'm not sure if she wanted me to change out some of the characters.
For political correctness?
Female, or maybe make them transgender for political correctness. So,
man.
When we make Roe v. Wade 2, the fetus fights back, with a new Supreme Court, we're going to make them all women and transgender. So
there you go. Make everybody happy.
She'll be excited for that. And I've already gotten offers from a lot of Hollywood studios so far on that.
I'm sure. I'm sure. So you're done with filming now?
Yeah, we shot the movie over the summer. We're in the middle of post-production now. So we're editing. And, that's most people don't understand that process is, 5 times as long as it is to shoot. I mean, it took us 4 weeks to shoot, but it'll, take sometimes, a year to edit the movie.
Sure. And where did you film it, Nick?
We shot mostly in Louisiana, but we shot a day in D.C. and 2 days in New York. One of the most interesting things is we were the only film in history to be allowed to shoot in St. Patrick's Cathedral, which we shot 4 scenes, including Bernard's, Nathanson's baptism and conversion.
The John Connell O'Connor baptized. I remember that as a big deal growing up as a New Yorker. Those conversions at the hands of Cardinal O'Connor were just amazing. Didn't he baptize Norma McCorvey? Am I right?
No, I think Flip Benham baptized Norma McCorvey.
Okay, that's
first,
right.
But
right. She was a Protestant, and then she became Catholic.
I think maybe when she became Catholic, I don't know, but I know her first baptism was Flip Benham.
Oh, wow, that's beautiful. So it's great to hear that you're in St. Patrick's. It's a good use of the cathedral. It's actually recording history that happened there, and very, very beautiful history. So did you have to keep the filming secret in Louisiana? I know Unplanned had to go undercover.
Yeah, but and everyone takes that out of context. Every film is shot in pretty much secret, right? If you shoot a Marvel movie and you see signs up, they don't say, Superman shooting over here, right? Because they don't want random people doing. They always use a different name on their billboards or the different name to shoot the movie. And so no different than a Marvel movie or a DC Comics movie, we shot under a different title. We shot under the title 1973. But, of course, it'd be like, these guys, everyone hates them so much that they had to shoot under a different title, right? Well, you could say the same thing about a DC Marvel movie. They shoot, Avengers, they're not shooting under the title Avengers.
Okay. Didn't know that.
For security. Yeah, for security. That's standard for security on set. If it's a high-profile movie, you should typically shoot under, a different name, just so you don't have, and we are pretty high-profile. I mean, we've had over 150 articles come out on our film, and no one's even seen it yet. I mean, it was before the movie was even. While the movie was being shot. I've never seen that in 20 years involved in film. I've never seen a movie, even a studio movie, get that much press before anyone's seen it.
Well, it's one thing about being controversial. It invites press, right? And any publicity is good publicity.
Absolutely. I
have friends that were in your scene in St. Patrick's Cathedral as extras. And it's a funny scene. The 2 boys had to go and put on some 1970s clothing. but their dad came with him and go, Dad, you're fine. You're still dressed in the 70s.
That's very funny.
So, yeah.
That's great that they...
Their dad's a lifetime pro-lifer. Like me, he's been involved in the movement in New York since the 70s. So he's still wearing the same clothes. When you're pro-life, it doesn't lend itself to a great income. So it takes up a lot of your time. And I always say when abortion's unthinkable, I'll be able to get myself a hobby. But right now, this is, how could you be thinking about anything else when this terrible, terrible human rights violation is going on all over the world? We like to say that if we lived in Nazi Germany, we'd be the one to stop the Holocaust. And I say, oh, really? With guns in your face? Tell me about it when you can't even say something pro-life at a cocktail party,
Yeah, no, it's very interesting what's going on. I think, even if Roe v. Wade is overturned, which I think it will be in the next 2 years, I still think the fight will continue to go on because most people don't realize.
Oh yeah, that's just
most
the
people
beginning.
Most people don't realize that overturning Roe doesn't actually make abortion illegal, although it does return it back to the states.
In the states that have made it illegal, that are working on it now, it will be, but not in New York, not in Virginia, not in Vermont, in Illinois, and now that's why the states are shoring up their abortion laws. Am I correct?
Correct, but I also think that you're not going to see blanket. Even in very pro-life states like Iowa, which has the heartbeat bill now, I just don't think you're going to see abortion illegal. Maybe in 5 to 10 of the 50 states you may see it completely illegal. I think most of the conservative states you'll get to at least as a heartbeat bill. I think they're going to have a hard time making it completely illegal in all 50 states around the country. But so you'll always have something to do.
It's a cultural shift.
So you'll always have yeah, but there is a cultural shift. But there is the cultural shift shifting back the other way. I'm glad you brought that up. If you look at the youth today, they're all really trending towards being pro-life because of technology and their ability to see a baby's heartbeat. But I would still think a lot of them still believe, okay, you can have an abortion in the first month, right before you actually see a baby's heartbeat. Right. Okay. Once they can see hands and feet and it looks like a person, then they sort of freak out and say, okay, well, we can't kill a baby, which is good. So we're actually trending in a better direction.
Yes, we are. I gave a presentation on that yesterday, that things are trending in a better direction. There are many state laws, such as waiting periods, sonogram law, parental notification, that give women in crisis pregnancies a chance to think twice about their options and what they're actually doing, and to look for help in other areas. The rise of pregnancy centers. I happen to operate a pregnancy center. There's 2,700 across the country. I remember the days when we were trying to outpace abortion clinics, and we have 4 times as many pregnancy centers as abortion. So yes, these are all very positive signs. Law is important, of course, because if it's legal, it seems to say that it's moral. But the changing of minds and hearts is a big ship to turn around. And you're right, it will take quite a while. But I haven't said it's happening, and your movie's proof.
Well, thank you. Well, listen, I have to ask.
I wouldn't dream about a movie like this 20 years ago.
Any last questions you want to ask before I have to go?
When is this coming out?
So it comes out in the fall. We don't have an actual date yet. We should know hopefully sometime this summer, when in the fall, and we'll let everybody know the date.
And we'll look for your Facebook campaign, and then we can share, and then we can do the same thing
can go to,
for Roe.
Yeah, they can go to Roe v. Wade. Right, any of your audience who wants to know about the film can go to RoeVWade.com. They can sign up to get involved. They can see the teaser there. They can look for the dates of when it's going to come out, when we have a theater near them. RoeVWade.com is sort of where they can go to be involved and get information.
Wonderful, and you could use our support to spread the word, right?
Yes, thank you so much. Absolutely.
Thank you for
The more
your time.
help, the better.
And thank you for doing this. We really appreciate your courage and persistence in doing this.
Pleasure.
And hopefully this will be another
thank you so much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Bye-bye now.
Take care. Bye.
Welcome to the second half of my show at Living the Gospel of Life about the upcoming movie Roe v. Wade. I interviewed producer Nick Loeb And now I'm going to introduce one of the executive producers, Dr. Marianne Urlakis, who is also a show host at WCAT. She is the host at Inter Vitam at Mortem, and she is on. When is this on, Dr. Urlakis?
We are on Monday afternoon in the 1 p.m. Eastern time slot.
1 p.m. Eastern, great. Dr. Urlakis is classically lettered in philosophy and bioethics. Dr. Marianne Urlakis is an independent bioethicist who provides ethical consultation, support, and advocacy to individuals and institutions, including movies, I see. That's probably a new one for you. And she is director of the Inter Vitam Institute for Nascent Human Life. Could you explain a little bit what the Inter Vitam Institute does?
The Inter Vitam Institute is a division of the Children First Foundation, and it was started in response to and faithful to the magisterial document Donum Vitae, which was issued by Cardinal Ratzinger as prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith in 1987. And it's a document that speaks to nascent human life, that life from conception to birth, and the sanctity of that life. And in that document, there's a plea for ethicists to come forward and be willing to share the beauty of the magisterium's teaching and help with moral ethical praxis, with that decision-making, with these tough questions about assisted reproductive technologies and things like that, yet remaining faithful to the Church's teaching. So that's what we do. This was Dr. Elizabeth Rex and I are the co-founders of the Donum Vitae Institute, and I am the executive director.
Wow, not an easy task today. I was just reading an article about a gay couple who got an egg from one member of the man's family and mixed it with the sperm from the other member, and then the grandmother was the, the surrogate mother. Unbelievable how, babies are being made nowadays. Anything but the way God gave us, right?
Exactly. It is unbelievable. It's tragic. And the sin of how these babies are conceived, they're still babies. Every one of these, from the moment of conception, is still a child. We deal a lot with questions regarding frozen embryos. And just like a child that would be conceived in rape or incest, we cannot, throw the baby out with the bathwater. We cannot. Oh, yeah.
No, poor babies. They didn't do anything wrong. Their parents are the ones that did. Yeah.
That's it.
They're the innocent victims of that. Yeah.
They're the innocent victims, and these poor children, when we look at the parable of the Good Samaritan, who is more hungry, poor, cold, unloved, abandoned than these poor children? So it's advocacy for these and all nascent human life that we're working at Donum Vitae.
And so we're going to talk today about your outreach in terms of being one of the co-executive producers. You're sharing that role with some pretty big superstars in the pro-life movement, aren't you?
I never have imagined that I would be in this position. When I had a friend of a friend say, would you like to speak with Mr. Nick Loeb regarding the new Roe v. Wade movie? I said, wow, I would be honored. I'd love to have the opportunity to speak with him, but I'm sure he's much too busy to. No, actually, he'd like to talk with you. So we had a wonderful phone conversation in November of 2016, 2017, and he outlined his plans for this Roe v. Wade movie, which were just phenomenal. Make a full motion picture, not a documentary, a motion picture to be played in theaters, telling the backstory of Roe v. Wade, of the decision. And put the information out there. St. Augustine says the truth is like a lion. Set it free and it'll defend itself. And that's what this movie does. It is not biased one way or the other. In fact, you have some pro-life folks who look at the trailer and say, well, is that completely fair to us? Well, yeah, it is. It's completely fair. And you have the pro-choice folks who automatically feel, oh, this is going to be propaganda, and then they begin to look at the trailer and are surprised. This is a very balanced view, an honest view of the backstory. Like anything, when he asked if I wished to be involved, I said, I need to see a script. And immediately the script came, and I read through it one night, and I was drawn to it. I would not sign my name onto anything that was going to be salacious. It was first and foremost what I found in there was truth. I saw nothing that I couldn't put my name on, and I said, I would love to be a part of this. What do you need for me to do to help in a pro bono way? This is not something that I am making anything on. In fact, most of the people that are involved in this are in the same position I am. We are helping, and we are donating our help because this is a cause we believe in.
Isn't this beautiful? As I often tell my listeners, everybody in every walk of life has something to contribute to the gospel of life and the culture of life in this country. From being a bioethicist, which very few of us are, to being an actor, to being an executive producer, or just a very important part, a donor. You had to raise money outside of the traditional channels for this movie because, as you can imagine, my listeners, Hollywood was not thrilled to have a movie which exposes the rather shady background of Roe versus Wade. I mean, it's a story that needs to be told, but very few people know it, even in the pro-life movement.
Exactly. There was so much of this that was shocking and surprising to me, and I do diligence. In addition to being a bioethicist, I'm also a strategic planner. So I went and did diligence before I was involved and checked things out, and sure enough, everything that he was presenting was 100% true. I had no idea. You look at the scene with Hugh Hefner and the Playboy Bunnies. I had no idea that Playboy Bunnies were being auctioned off to support Planned Parenthood.
That's news to me too. Wow. I think I'm going to find a lot shocking in this film. And Nick Loeb said it's sort of like a spy novel, a detective novel, but it's true, which makes it all the more compelling.
It is. It is like a spy novel and a detective novel. There are more twists and turns in there than a corkscrew, and they are true. And yes, we did have a heck of a time getting funding at the beginning. Hollywood certainly does not want to see movies like this and Unplanned made. And let's face it, Planned Parenthood is a very large organization. They do not want to have movies like this made either. So we had to go outside of the usual channels for fundraising. I can't think of another movie of this magnitude that used crowdfunding as a mechanism for raising money. And Facebook, Mr. Loeb was working diligently on Facebook, and Facebook wouldn't allow it because of the pro-life potential. They cut the account. They put a hold on private accounts. You try and forward these emails, and they would end up intercepted. It was pretty amazing to see how the enemy works through channels that are out there every day that we use every day, and kind of have confidence in and think are okay. So money was raised. And the movie was shot last summer. It's in post-production now, and I am eager to have it out there. Looking at what's happened with Unplanned and the success of Unplanned, I think
incredible.
Yeah, I think these two bookend beautifully, and I know they've had the same struggle we've had with raising money, with finding theaters who are willing to let this be shown. And stand back.
And also with social media, Facebook, I think it was Twitter gave them, discontinued their account, erased followers. I had trouble staying a follower of Unplanned. I think Facebook didn't run ads, Google wouldn't run ads, and very few networks did. I think only Fox ran ads for Unplanned. So you'll probably run into the same problems when you go for ads. But the Facebook playing around is pretty familiar to pro-lifers by now. In fact, there were testimonies by the producers of Unplanned and Abby Johnson, Ashley Bratcher, I believe, the actress, just recently with Senator Ted Cruz in the U.S. Senate, talking about social media, cutting our free speech rights.
It's incredible. It is. I'm a user of all of these venues of social media. They're powerful tools, and they can be used in a really good way. But yes, we had all of that happen. We had accounts dropped, ads that he had paid for that were taken away. It's unreal. If we're just trying to get the truth out, we're just trying to offer balance, and clearly they're not cutting the ads on the other side. What is wrong with letting intelligent people make decisions themselves? Isn't that the whole, choice mantra?
They don't really believe that now, do they?
So, why not let people see the ads and do what they wish with their money, do what they wish with their time in terms of seeing it? Do we really need, Facebook and others to be paternalistic and to regulate what people see? It's pretty impressive. My daughter had told me today on the way back from Mass, she's 20, this was a 20-year-old, one of folks in her circle had been getting all sorts of ads for Plan B, the morning after pill. Mm-hmm. And my daughter, when she gets these ads, she reports them and says, I don't want to see them. And this person did the query on, why am I getting these ads? And what she got back was that she had a number of male friends who were listed as close friends who had birthdays within the next 7 days.
What? So, therefore, she would need birth control? Or not birth control, abortion pill.
Abortion pill. That's the level of intrusion that our social media has.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, that's really creepy.
It is really creepy.
For me. Oh, well, they must have a basis for this. Their market research into human sexual behavior must have told them that this is a thing, or they wouldn't be wasting their money. Oh, my goodness. I thought maybe because she liked the same music or clothing as the typical woman of her age. And they just figured, you're going to need this because you're 20 years old and you're in college or whatever. Wow.
They actually went into contact lists and looked at birth dates. That just absolutely shocked me. But here they know enough about their market research to know that if they put these ads out there that are paid for Unplanned, for Roe v. Wade, that hearts and minds are going to be changed.
Of course.
And they can't take that risk.
Of course, we need to reach out to the people that wouldn't normally see this. And it's good for the choir, too, because we need to shore up our knowledge, and it gives you more ammunition when you go out there to speak the truth. And encouragement. When I saw Unplanned, I had tears running down my cheeks, but I didn't have a guilt complex because I run a pregnancy center. So I said, I'm already in the fight. But, boy, it's good to know that it makes that much of a difference, and that the people that I'm working to put out of a job can have a change of heart. And can be, can redeemed by our Lord and live a beautiful, fulfilled life like Abby Johnson, a former abortion clinic director who's expecting her 8th child happily. That's what I wish for all the people who work at the Planned Parenthood around the corner from my pregnancy center. But it's also good for those people who thought that Planned Parenthood is this philanthropic organization that helps women, like Abby did for many years. I was trying to convince herself, even as evidence mounted, that they were anything but. And the same thing with Roe versus Wade. I mean, just because it's a historic Supreme Court decision doesn't mean it doesn't need to be overturned. Dred Scott was a historic Supreme Court decision that said a black person is not worth equal to a white person's property. Well, that certainly was overturned. And there are many Supreme Court decisions which reflect the fallibility of the Supreme Court itself. And the more we know about that, the more shocking it is, because it was the result of pro-abortion activism.
That's it. It was pro-abortion activism. It's a flawed decision. You look at it, it's not a good judicial decision. If it were weighed on judicial merits, when you look at the documents that were informing the justices, many of whom had family members who were working for Planned Parenthood, when you look at the documents that they were using materials that were provided by activists, particularly one book. They were
Abortion, right? By Larry Lader?
Exactly. They were not looking at previous case law. They were not looking at documents that are usually used in judicial decision making. It's a flawed decision, and this movie points out just how flawed it is. And it's going to have a bit of backlash. But, get that truth out there and let intelligent people start thinking. I've got a philosophy background. I've always believed that you give people the truth and you let them, use their God-given powers of reason and see what happens. That's why we're here. And I'm thrilled that this movie is finally coming to fruition and is going to be out there. And I encourage people if you want to know what you can do to help, yes, they can still use some funding to get it out there, to get it into the theaters, to get it through. When it does come out, you realize that the battles that are being fought to have it advertised, to get it in a local theater, go see it, take people to see it. And when it comes out on DVD, grab those DVDs. Have, like unplanned parties and Roe v. Wade parties and show them to folks.
We filled up an entire theater, 6 screens, I think it was, 6 screens with 259 people, mostly pro-lifers, but we helped build up the opening weekend. And that's very important with any film, that the opening weekend be very strong, especially if they're experiencing resistance at the distribution of the film, like Unplanned. I believe they only started out in 1,000 theaters out of a potential 4,000 or 5,000, is it? And then they built, because it's such a strong opening weekend, they outperformed by 3 times what they were expected to do. $6 million instead of 2. They were awarded over 700 theaters. And I know locally we were asking local theater owners to show the film, and one of them did. And he had a backlash. There were pro-abortion women that hadn't seen the film. They were calling it, like you said, propaganda. That's going to be used against us. No matter how we tell the truth and no matter how clear the perspective and how fair we are, those who have abortion on their conscience and on their heart are going to fight against it. And those who make money on abortion are going to fight against it with all they have in them, because it's their self-deception that is endangered. It's always hard when you've been wrong to turn around and admit your error in your ways. Like Abby Johnson. In Unplanned, you can see her fighting her own conscience. Her family, her husband, everybody knew better until she finally knew better. But it took, 8 years? So some of us, have chosen the wrong path in terms of abortion. Instead of seeking God's forgiveness, we sort of hunker down in our sin and get very angry when it's challenged. And that will be, I think, the main resistance to this film. People who are hurting and really need the healing that confession and counseling can bring.
You are absolutely right on every one of those points. Looking at my own life, I have never been as angry as I am or as volatile as I am when I know I'm wrong. As my children, I have 8 of them. Or my husband. When I know I'm wrong, don't go near me.
Yeah, right. It's kind of a sign that you're losing the battle, isn't it? When you get very angry and maybe even throw a few darts at the opponent that, unfair. You sort of pull some unfair things out of your hat. And that's what we see, sometimes in the com boxes. So I tried to, when I answered some of these comments, I just said, there is healing. Here's my phone number. Come talk to us. And that's what got me thrown off the movie theater's Facebook page. They found those comments just unbearable, that we were offering help and healing, because that would mean they made a mistake. And they're still holding on to that anger. And there's so many hurt women. I mean, if it's true that almost 40% of American women have had abortions, that's a lot of suffering women out there.
There is, and the men who are not,
of
the
course.
men too, the men who really need healing and are trying to reach out. One of my dearest friends and colleagues is Victoria Thorne. And she's been on my radio station too on WCAT, Inter Vitam at Mortem, Between Life and Death, interviews and discussion with a Catholic bioethicist. Vicki Thorne is the founder of Project Rachel, the largest post-abortion healing ministry in the world, in 150 dioceses in the United States and 28 different countries. She sits with the Pontifical Commission for Life, just phenomenal. And, the healing is out there. These women, they need it. She's been doing this since the late 70s, and the stories that she tells are incredible. If nothing else, these movies hopefully will get some of these women and men and family members to the right resources to be able to get that healing. I know our movie, Roe v. Wade, is offering 10% of the profits back to pro-life centers, to pro-life causes, but particularly pregnancy help centers.
Yay!
Yay, exactly. When you're supporting these movies, you are supporting great causes too. And as the movie makers stand back and take a look at this and see the success of Unplanned and hopefully the success of Roe v. Wade, they're also going to see that there is a market for the truth. Who would have thought?
Yeah, right.
There's a market, there's a market for the truth. People are hungry for that truth. And maybe the next movie won't have to go through all of the hoops that these two trailblazers have gone through to get the funding and get the story out there. Maybe they will. But there is going to be more and more folks. There is going to be a groundswell of this grassroots movement. People want to see the truth. It's not the usual story that you see on the silver screen.
Mm-hmm.
It is factually, it is historically factual, and people don't like being deceived. And you've got generations of people here who have been deceived, and they're going to sit there in the movie theater and they're going to see the truth, and they're going to go look up these documents as those of us who have done diligence did, and are going to be shocked.
Yeah. Absolutely. They're going to realize that this is one of the longest-running deceptions in American history. So we're 44 years old now, that we've been deceived about the origins of abortion. How did it become legal? How are we one of the few countries in the world that has abortion legal till birth? I mean, that's a singular mark of shame. We're up there with North Korea, Vietnam, communist China. We're up with some of the most extreme regimes on earth in the way we allow abortion. Holland, which is well known for euthanasia and trying to eliminate children with Down syndrome, being proud of that. We're up there with the eugenics, nations that are fond of their eugenics. And Canada, United States, Vietnam, North Korea, Holland, and correct me if I'm wrong, allow abortion until birth.
I believe you're right. And then we actually allow the trafficking in these baby parts as well.
Oh, I know. Even though it's illegal, poor David Deladian, who exposed it, was treated as a criminal by Kamala Harris, by the way, the presidential candidate that is having so much compassion for murderers in jail. Will put David Deladian in jail for making a fake California ID. If every person who made a fake ID, every kid who wanted to drink went to jail, they wouldn't have enough jails. But yeah, she put him in trouble because he exposed. He was a whistleblower. He exposed trafficking in baby parts of Planned Parenthood. This is the way the judicial system, the politics are all twisted right now, based on the lies that undergird Roe versus Wade. So you pull that out from under it, a lot of things could go collapsing if Americans see the truth.
A lot of things are going to go collapsing. I agree with you. Trafficking is both prongs of the trafficking. We have the trafficking in fetal parts, but you also see how the trafficking industry in the United States, the human trafficking industry, is interwoven with the abortion story as well. Of course.
They need abortion to be able to traffic these young women because birth control doesn't always work. And many times the victim is underaged. Not only is she trafficked, but she's underaged, and the abortion clinics look the other way. And we have them on tape doing so, with Lila Rose exposed that. the counselors telling, the abortion counselors telling her as a young woman to lie about her age when she posed as a young underage girl seeking abortion, and to lie about her boyfriend's age. And this is done regularly. We had a case here in Connecticut where a young woman was abducted, brought into Planned Parenthood by her rapist, and received an abortion while she was underage. And she could have been found and saved if Planned Parenthood had done what they had to do by the law. And yet there's no prosecution of Planned Parenthood. They got away with it. And that poor young girl returned to the arms of her assailant for another few months and away from her family. And this happens over and over again in this country. And this is all the people who cry for social justice. This is an outrage.
This is an outrage. This is exactly. And, as we're speaking about all of these things that are so dark and so evil, the abortion itself, the decision, the Roe v. Wade decision, the lie, the father of lies, the lie, the trafficking in fetal parts, the abuse of the sanctity of human life, and the trafficking in children, the trafficking in human flesh, the sex traffic trade. All of these things are evil. All of these things point to a demonic evil. When we look at the volume of filth that's here, people ask, what can we do? One thing we can do is pray. And so for all your listeners out there, if you want to know what you can do to help, besides going and seeing the movies and supporting them and being a voice out there, please, the most important thing we need is prayer. And don't forget that St. Michael prayer and the prayers to Our Lady, but we could really use to be covered in prayer as we try and go forward with it.
Yeah, there's a real spiritual battle to keep this darkness hidden. And it's very clear when it comes out in the level of anger and lying and vitriol that we're stepping on Satan's toes here, and he will unfortunately rear his ugly head as this release date nears. But we're Catholics; we know how to handle him. We have Our Lady on our side. We have the Rosary. We have the St. Michael prayer, holy water. We're all set. We have everything we need. We just have to remember to use them, and we have to remember who wins in the end. But we want to make sure that Satan takes as few souls to hell as possible. That's the real battle. Not whether or not our Lord wins in the end, because we know He does. We just celebrated. We're still celebrating Easter week, But it's a matter of how many souls will be lost to this horrible culture of death that we live in. And that's what, keeps me up at night, is not just the unborn babies that are suffering torturous death, but the souls of the fathers and mothers and grandmothers and friends that are complicit in this that will be lost.
And the doctors and the nurses, the researchers and everybody else.
So many thousands of people, maybe millions of people that are complicit in the abortion industry. And my heart breaks for them. Let's pray that they're somehow they see this movie and their eyes are opened to what they were complicit in, and they can't say like the Nazis at Nuremberg, I was just doing my job. There's no such excuse, especially in the information age in which we live, when the truth is 2 clicks away. If they really wanted to know the truth, there's a lot of lies out there, If they really keep pursuing it, they can find it, and this movie will be a tremendous resource. I remember in the pregnancy center I was working at before my current one, we used to do education sessions for the women, and we showed that had already had children. And we would follow them up for 2 years, giving them all sorts of wonderful baby clothes and diapers and accessories, and they would do an education session once a month. And we showed them the movie Hush. I don't know if you're familiar with Hush, but it's a documentary done by a pro-choice filmmaker in Canada about how women are hurt by abortion, including the breast cancer link, and the trauma of post-abortion trauma. And the women who saw that film, many of whom had abortions, were outraged at how the truth was hidden from them. By their own healthcare professionals, their own families, their society, social workers, you name it. They were very upset, and they should be. Especially poor women are very often the ones that are targeted for abortion and whatnot, because many of the people who are purveyors of abortion think that their lives would be better off without children, that somehow that's what's keeping them poor. And they may have good motives, they may think they're helping, but poor women are definitely targeted for abortion. 80% of Planned Parenthood facilities are in lower-income neighborhoods where these women are. And Margaret Sanger herself, as the film will point out, was a eugenist. She believed that certain people should reproduce. I believe she wanted to get a permit to have a child, right? She wanted that to be approved. in the Congress. And thankfully it wasn't. But that's the kind of restriction she felt should be placed upon parenthood. And certainly people of color and poor people, Southern Mediterranean people, South Americans, Africans, Asians, were not
Irish Catholics
considered Northern European. They weren't considered Irish Catholics, which she was. We're not considered worthy of life. She wants to eliminate all of us, and because we're obviously, dragging down the gene pool, according to her. So, anyway, thank you so much for coming on and enlightening us more about Roe versus Wade. Maybe you can come again when the movie's released, and we can talk about it some more. The estimated date is this fall. Am I right? Fall of 2019?
Yep, that's the date that I'm hearing too. So the post-production process it takes a bit of time too. So I know that's in the works, and
very important. The editing.
It is. Right, exactly.
Because you can have a message, but if it's overblown and too long and not sharply honed, you'll lose your audience's attention. We're used to very action-packed, impactful movies, and one that drones on, even if it's the truth, will not have the attention and won't receive the interest. So a well-edited film is definitely worth the wait, because I know a lot of my my Facebook friends say, when's it coming out? And I said, patience.
Exactly. I'm getting the same thing. When it's like, guys, just I'm putting this in God's hands. It's going to come out when it's the right time.
That's right.
And for all of your listeners who are praying for us, for me, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. It means a ton, and I'm praying for y'all too.
And pray for the people that will go see it. I know Knights of Columbus in Connecticut that were showing the film unplanned a week early. They had a preview, and they rented an auditorium, and they charged $50 a head. Now, it was obviously they didn't need that much money to pay for it. They were doing it so that each person that went in paid for another 4 tickets at a typical theater, so that they could offer it to university students. And I think that's a marvelous idea for Roe versus Wade. Rent it, build an auditorium full of donors that are willing to pay way more for a ticket, so that people who might not be willing to pay the $12 or whatever can go see it. And that would, be the typical college kid who thinks they know everything from their wonderful professors that, as you know, 90% of them are leading them astray, especially with bioethics. And those are the ones that are in the age group that Roe versus Wade affects most directly, the high abortion age group in the early 20s. So that's really would be important.
Idea.
Yeah, raise some money.
I will share that.
I love that idea, and I would like to get them on to talk about its success. But we did too. We had a collection at our screening of Unplanned, and as a pregnancy center director, I was the proud recipient of half of the funds collected. So there's many good ways that people can help without being an actor. Or an extra in the film, which you are. I'll be looking for you when I see it in the Washington scene. I also have friends that were in the New York City scene, so I look forward to that. So there's many different ways that people can help. And like I said, as the opening comes up next fall, we'll talk about it again, because this is definitely a wonderful year with these 2 bookend movies, with Unplanned and Roe versus Wade. And last year we had Gosnell, which was screened at the White House last week. So even the White House is seeing this. It's amazing. These are amazing times. As dark as they are in some areas, they're very bright. And that's what my pastor said. The white is getting lighter, and the darkness is getting blacker.
It is. There is a real polarization out there. There is. It is. There is a real polarization, and it's going to get worse. And in some ways, that's the direction we're heading, and we need to embrace that too.
That's right. We were as Bishop Olms had said in the Catholic Prayer Breakfast, we were born for times like this. God knew this when He created us and had us born in these days, and He will equip us. We just have to go to Him in prayer. Thank you so much, Dr. Urlakis. And don't forget, her show, Inter Vitam at Mortem, is on the WCAT lineup, and we look forward to having you back. God bless.
God bless. Thank you very much.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.